Some to misery are born, every morn and every night. Some are born to sweet delight. Some are born to sweet delight. Some are born to endless night. We are led to believe a lie when we see not through the eye, which was born in a night to perish in a night when the soul slept in beams of light. Okay, so I want to talk today about um, bureaucratic sadism. Now, uh, what so this kind of lends itself to uh, some videos I'm going to be doing in the future. So, before we get into that, though, I want to lay out sort of some definitions. The word bureaucracy entered our lexicon in the 18th century via French literature. This neologism was coined by the political economist Vincent de Gournay, who considered the absurd possibility of rule by office or rule by a desk. Gournay's model followed the form of more serious government terms, such as rule by the best or aristocracy, and rule by the people or democracy. Bureaucracy developed more during the French Revolution, whose terror was infamously bureaucratic, with dossiers the way to denunciation, and then to condemnation, and eventually execution. The term sadism was coined by Richard von Krafft-Ebing in response to the works of the famous French author the Marquis de Sade, who derived sexual pleasure by dominating others and causing them pain. Krafft-Ebing defined sadism as, quote, the experience of sexual, pleasurable sensations produced by acts of cruelty, bodily punishment, afflicted on one's own person or when witnessed in others, be they animals or human beings, unquote. Furthermore, he held that the innate desire to humiliate and hurt was characteristic of all humans, and I agree. Sadistic traits and behaviors are indeed quite common. Theodore Millon claimed that there were four subtypes of sadism, which he termed enforcing sadism, explosive sadism, spineless sadism, and tyrannical sadism. And I will go more in depth on those in other videos. For the purpose of this video, though, we are going to focus on enforcing sadism. So, enforcing sadism has compulsive features, but this is hostility sublimated in the public interest. These are people like police officers, it can be a bossy supervisor, this could be um, university professors or deans. And basically, these people believe that they possess the right, quote unquote, to be pitiless, merciless, coarse, and barbarous. The task, they think, is to control and punish, and they wish to do so, and that's exactly what they do. To go into this in more detail, this category of sadist can sometimes be found among military sergeants. If you've ever watched the movie Apocalypse Now, the drill sergeant is a very good example of an enforcing type of sadist. They're often prison guards or prison wardens, police officers, or other authoritative functions because they're in a position where they feel they should be the ones controlling and punishing people who have broken the rules, regulations, or laws. Though they believe that they are acting for the common interest, there are deeper motives than just that. These sadists generally seek out the rule breakers within their domain of authority or in society in general, and they exercise the most severe punishments they can give out for the individual case. If enforcing sadists are employed by society as, for example, police or prison staff, their actions are not actually perceived to be unjust. Oh, they're just doing their job, right? And they do, in fact, have far reaching freedom to dominate, victimize, or destroy others at will. They're supposed to act fairly, but their personalities are not able to put limits on the emotions that drive their sadistically vicious behaviors. The more these sadists dominate and punish others, the more satisfaction and power they feel. Their self perception of righteousness is reinforced and their ego increases. The satisfaction the enforcing sadist gets from punishing other people can actually reach a state of intoxication where they cannot stop their behavior and lose awareness of reality in these situations. In most cases, this does not attract any negative attention because they're acting within their legal authority to exert power and behave completely normally in everyday situations. So it may be that unless you're a victim of their, sadism, if you just see them in their regular everyday life outside of work, they seem like perfectly normal people. Though not as troublesome, many minor bureaucrats also possess such traits. The enforcing sadist represents a combination of sadistic and compulsive personalities. Now, interestingly, a 2020 report from the National Registry of Exonerations on Government Misconduct actually found that prosecutors, district attorneys, police, and other law enforcement engaged in things like witness tampering, misconduct during interrogations of suspects, fabricating evidence, concealing exculpatory evidence, and misconduct at trial. And that, of course, goes for judges as well. Now, I want to talk about something called ponerology. Ponerology is the study of evil, and political ponerology is actually a book, but it is the study of the nature and causes of evil in politics. Now, the book analyzes the common factors that lead to the rise and propagation of oppressive and inhuman regimes, and the role of psychopaths and other personality disorders in bending political parties, institutions, and media to their depraved worldview. Ponerogenesis can be initiated when pathological people or groups infiltrate a system from the outside, sometimes implementing an element of force even earlier in the process as they gradually break down the system's resistance. The process of ponerogenesis culminates in the establishment of what's called a pathocracy. Now, a pathocracy is defined as a system of government thus created wherein a small pathological minority of pathocrats takes control over a society of normal people. This is essentially a human system in which the power structures are run by psychopathological people, and the value system is dominated by their psychopathological values. Such a system resembles and functions like a severely pathological individual, and it stands in sharp contrast to systems that are run by normal people. Now, I want to move on to bureaucratic sadism. Hans Schreer wrote in The Inhumanity of Government Bureaucracies that bureaucracies are the dominant means by which the governments control and influence the daily lives of people throughout the world. He notes that the human devastation wreaked by past and present political regimes has not been inflicted personally by leaders such as Joseph Stalin, Saddam Hussein, and Pol Pot, but by rank and file members of bureaucracies or people acting with their approval. Bureaucratic sadists believe they are fundamentally superior creatures. They rule from their ivory tower, their fortress of horrors. They spit their venom from the judge's bench, the prosecutor's podium, and all the other areas of ill repute among the elite institutions, sneering and swaggering around like they're peacocks. Behind closed doors, they get together and celebrate with gleeful malice the destruction of those whose lives they directed the ruin of. Their defining feature is cruelty from behind a mask of virtue. They are vicious, entitled, and ruthless. Imagine the female governor of Michigan, the most powerful person arguably in that state, parading around at a press conference in the clothes of victimhood, the most powerful, but also the most victimized. I mean, it's ridiculous. Our overlords and their media clerics are always hard at work manufacturing the next boogeyman to be dehumanized and targeted for punishment. In fact, the law has always been a weapon for the powerful and wealthy to wield against the less powerful and the most vulnerable. With increasing spite, more and more, the laws and mandates or dictates our rulers impose are designed to punish those who cannot afford to properly engage the massive, bloated system. In essence, it is backhanded oppression while proclaiming equality. It is not enough that they spout their narratives, they try to force you to adopt them. The imposition of their own reality is, of course, a key component in the dominance of those who seek to dominate. They portray themselves also often as wounded heroes and victims, while their target, the people they want to target, are always portrayed as irredeemable villains, um, beyond rehabilitation or redemption. You know, they completely dehumanize their targets. Uh, it is very sad. They engage in intellectual sadism and attempt to get you to suspend logic in order to entertain their false narratives. Thus, cognitive dissonance is imposed on you in the name of the quote unquote greater good. They present for mass consumption the ritual slaying of designated boogeymen and scapegoats. This is deliberate, invested, and enjoying and reveling in its own cruelty. Bureaucracy is now monstrosity, the banality of evil. Evil may indeed often be the most banal. Perhaps sometimes it comes instead with Mephistophelian splendor, but very often it's a party goer, boisterous, braying, a frat alumnus, a bully who loves being a bully, a successful professional, lip smacking at the misery of those he or she hurts, and one who is increasingly happy to cop to that enjoyment, to proclaim it, to perform it. This sadism has become systematic. Bureaucrats jeer while debasing their victims. The rich and powerful are given the privilege to derive pleasure from being allowed to discharge their power on a powerless person. The more powerless or demonized the victim, the more the sadistic bureaucrat enjoys the exercising of his power. This consists of permission for and a right to cruelty. The sadistic rulers even extend a taste of this power to the lower classes, allowing some to be the prison guards, if you will, of the panopticon. They're allowed to participate in the punishment of others, getting to share in their domination and subjugation. Sadism can be learned once the initial distress from inflicting pain and harm subsides. Malice and brutality in their most unmediated forms are deemed appropriate. The vindictiveness of many prosecutors, cops, and judges is on display under the false veneer of righteous justice. Viciousness justifies itself post facto. The agonies inflicted by the bureaucrat are for, of course, society, to keep everybody safe. Think about this scenario. A judge allows a lying informant to commit perjury, knowing the result will be the defendant going to jail for a very long time and being taken from their children. How about this? A judge allows the government to introduce fabricated evidence, knowing this is a violation of rights. How about judges holding children ransom until they've drained the finances of the parents? How else could you describe this behavior besides sadistic? The frenzy with which the US state has targeted quote unquote dissidents is disturbing in its gruesome efficiency and precision. To viciously punish the dissident is, literally, in the hundreds of thousands of cases, to be invested in the torments of the target or subject. To make this more palatable, we are presented with the therapeutic culture of punishment, where lots of airtime is dedicated to retribution for the so called victims and family of victims to obtain satisfaction from sadism and therapeutic viciousness. In any other part of the world, these desires would never be part of the legal process. The moral panicking of half the country justifies victimization and a toxic stream of performative sadism. The courts write long winded opinions justifying this brutality and savagery as necessary, as a deterrent. The results of bureaucratic sadism are evident in the culture of cruelty they maintain and reinforce. It is a system that can instrumentalize its own decadent excess. Law professors today debate not whether to end torture, but over how best to torture. The bureaucratic sadist performs like a functionary, with their politics of remorselessness constantly pushing the bounds of permissible punitivity until all the depths have been plumbed. They believe they get to decide who has a right to live and who deserves to die. They are invested in sadism. Yes, they find satisfaction and derive pleasure from the devastation they cause. That is my thoughts on bureaucratic sadism. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think about the idea of bureaucratic sadism, and the how the system is designed to reinforce that? I'm interested to hear your thoughts. All right. Bye, everybody.